Welcome to this video about using policy gradient in practice. About this subtitle, this is a reference to Ali Raimi's talk at NeurIPS a few years ago, where he explained very usefully that more and more deep learning people just use algorithms without trying to understand what's happening in practice, okay? And this is not what science should do. In science, you should try to understand the phenomena and even have a mathematical understanding of it. So in this video, we won't go to the mathematical understanding, but I will show you that you need to investigate phenomena to make policy gradient algorithms work in practice. So first, this class is a practical counterpart of a more theoretical policy gradient class, which is available on a related YouTube video, okay, where I explain the algorithms from a mathematical point of view. But here we will just run the algorithms and see what happens, okay? And this video is meant to come with labs that I am doing with my students, and it's related to this GitHub repository, so you can find the code corresponding to what I will show you on this repository. Okay. I must also say immediately that there will be an accompanying video where I explain the code of this repository. So in this video here, we will investigate basic policy gradient algorithms and phenomena. And in my opinion, if you want to understand what you are doing when you use state-of-the-art deep reinforcement learning algorithms, you first have to investigate those very simple policy gradient techniques, so that you get a better understanding of what's happening. Okay, so to me that's a prerequisite before using state-of-the-art algorithms. And that's the point of my subtitle, that I strongly believe that understanding the phenomena is better and more interesting than just using state-of-the-art deep reinforcement learning algorithms as a black box. Often as an engineer, you will just plug soft actor critic or something like this and cross your fingers hoping that it will work. But if it doesn't, then you don't know what to do. Whereas if you understand the phenomena, then you can do something. Okay? So in practice, what will we study here? So as I said, we will study several policy gradient algorithms, and we will use several also standard GYM, OpenAI GYM benchmarks, so the CartPol, the Mountain Car, actually it's continuous version, and the Pendulum benchmark, which are very simple, so-called classic control benchmark, where you can tune your algorithm so that it obtains some fair performance. Okay, and we will also use three different kinds of policies. We will use Bernoulli policies, Gaussian policies, and squash Gaussian policies, and I will explain to you what are those during the video. Finally, I will provide a lot of visualization. I think this is very important. You have to visualize things if you want to understand what's happening. So we will visualize policies, we will visualize critics, we will visualize learning curves, so as to better understand the performance that we get and why we get such or such performance. In practice, we will also study different variants of the policy gradient algorithm. So we will just use a sum of rewards, a discounted sum of rewards, and some advantage variant. I will explain this shortly after this slide. There will be a final specific part about learning a critic and using the critic as a baseline in those policy gradient algorithms. And I will present along the way several issues that you may encounter, several tricks that you may use to solve those issues. And as I said before, there will be another video about the code itself that will help you use the labs to investigate those phenomena by yourself. So this slide is just a reminder of my policy gradient class video, where I said that in fact there are several variants of the policy gradient algorithms. The general form is this. So you take a stochastic policy, p theta, that then gives you the probability of taking an action given the state. Then you take the log derivative of this probability and you multiply by something that will be different depending on the algorithm, and then you take the expectation of this complicated term over several trajectories, and this gives you the gradient that you should apply to your policy so as to improve it to get a better performance. Okay, and the important point is that you can use different terms to change the impact of your log derivative of your probability of action. Okay, and in this particular class we will use, for phi, we will use three particular terms. We will just use a sum of rewards after just a sum of reward along the whole trajectory, sorry. We will also use a discounted version of this sum of reward. So the sum of reward, you get it when you take gamma is equal to 1, okay? But if you take a gamma which is slower than 1, then you get a discounted reward along the trajectory. And finally, we will use a case with a baseline, whereas a baseline we use the average value over all the rewards, okay? So we just, this gives you whether the sequence of action that you took was better than average or worse than average, and if it's better than average, you should increase the probability of taking the corresponding actions, and if it's worse than average, then you should decrease these probabilities. I won't explain the rest, and again, if you want to go back to the understanding of all this, you have to watch my policy gradient video. So let's start. First, we will investigate the CART-POL environment. So that's the easiest, you will see it in the results, the easiest OpenAI GIM classic control environment. Okay, that's a standard. It was already used by Sutton and Bartow in the 80s, so 40 years ago. Okay. So what's the CART-POL? You have some cart here that can move along the x-axis, and you have a pole, and you must balance, you must move the cart so that the pole keeps balanced in the vertical position. Okay. You have 4 state dimensions, which are the position and velocity along the x-axis, and the angle and angular velocity of the pole. Okay, so that you can control whether it is falling or not. Okay, and you just have binary actions. You can just push left or push right. Okay, and to perform these labs, I have added my own GIM environment, which is a continuous CART-POL, where in fact instead of just pushing left or right with a power of 1, okay, I can now use a continuous action, which is an action in -1 and 1, so that I can, for instance, do nothing if my pole is balanced. Okay, and you will see that using a Bernoulli policy, we just use -1 and 1, and if we use for instance Gaussian policy, then you can get any action between -1 and 1. Okay, so let's first start with the Bernoulli policies. So what's a Bernoulli? Again, that's also explained in my policy gradient video, but it's useful to give a reminder here. So in the Bernoulli policy, you just have a probability to take an action. So you set a threshold with some parameter which is p, okay, and if you are below p, then you will take one action, and if you are above p, then you will take the other action. So for instance, here the probability to taking the right action is 15%, and the probability to take the left action is 85%. And I can move, of course, this threshold. This is what learning does. It moves this threshold so that I will have a higher probability to get the correct action, and I may even move to a deterministic policy if I move my threshold to 0 or to 1. Okay. One point is that this probability p should keep between 0 and 1. Okay, so for doing this with a neural network, you will have to use some sigmoid or hyperbolic tangent layer so as to prevent the output of your network to move away from 0, 1. Okay, and of course, what's very simple is that if you increase the probability of taking the left, but as a consequence, you decrease the probability of taking right because you are just moving the threshold. That's obvious. But this might not be the case if you have more than 2 actions. Okay. So we take a Bernoulli policy. I will show you in my coding video how it's coded, and that's not the point here. I take three variants of the policy gradient algorithm. One where I take the sum, one I take the discounted sum of reward, and when I take the normalized discounted sum of reward. So I'm subtracting the average value. And you can see that those three algorithms work in practice. So you start with a low performance. Okay, a word about performance in the cart poll environment. The goal is to balance the poll for a number of time steps. Okay, and here the number of time steps is set to 200. So if your performance is at 200, it means that you have succeeded in balancing the poll for 200 time steps. So in the beginning, you can see that it does not balance the poll for more than 25 time steps, for instance, here. And little by little, by applying the policy gradient algorithm, you can see that the performance increases and reaches 200 with some large variance. And I will comment on that large variance later on. Okay, so you can see that those three algorithms work well in practice. And what's interesting is that I am just using the policy gradient. So I am just taking a policy, getting some trajectories with this policy, then applying the policy gradient, which improves my policy, and then I take new trajectories, etc., etc. So you can see that there is no additional exploration. The fact that is that the stochasticity of the binary policy that you obtain with the Bernoulli policy is enough to explore, so as to find what's good and what's not good, so that your reinforcement learning algorithm can find the optimal policy. Okay, fine, it works. We are very happy, and as you will see in the code, that's quite easy to get those results. Okay, so to investigate further, let's visualize the policies. So that's an initial policy. So how do you read this picture? In fact, here you have the position, and here you have the angle of the poll. So it's two-dimensional, whereas our state is four-dimensional. So as I said, we have four dimensions which are the position, the velocity along the x-axis, the angle, and the angular velocity. But to visualize such a policy, I have to choose two features of this state space. Okay, for that I have coded, you will see in the code, a feature inverter of wrapper, which changes the order of the features so that I will always display the first two features, and I used this inverter so that the position and angle are the two first features, whereas in the standard cart poll environment, the first two features are the position and the speed. So if I want to display the position and the angle, I have to switch those two features, which the feature inverter does, so that I can display this. And then you can see that here yellow means an action of 1, so that's pushing right, for instance, or is it left? No, that's pushing right, exactly. And here an action of 0 means pushing left. And since I have a Bernoulli policy, I just use those two actions. Actually, a 0 in the policy will mean an action of -1, so that's pushing with a magnitude of 1 here and -1 here. Okay, and you can see that in the beginning the policy is random because you get a random picture of yellow and black dots. Okay, and after training you can see the policy that you get. And basically this policy says something very simple, which is when your position is on the right, you should push left, and when your position is on the left, you should push right. So it makes so that your position will stay around 0. Okay, and then about the angle, that's due to the slope here. The idea is that if you are on the right and your pole is tilted in that direction, then you should push in the other direction, etc. But you can see that here that's a little more complicated to determine what you should do depending on the angle. Okay, but the general idea is just to push left when you are right and right when you are left, and then to manage the pole in this particular area. Okay, so this works, and you can visualize how the policy changes through time using this visualization. Okay, I am also, okay, this might come later on because I won't use the critique now, but I want to show you immediately what's a good critique. So here I have an initial critique which tells me what is the value of being in that particular state, for instance. And you can see that in the beginning the values are organized more or less randomly. And then after training, what the critic tells me is that it's very good. Here the value is high, so it's 80. It's very good to be in the center, so to be in the position where x is 0 and with a 0 angle, okay? And it's much worse to be away from 0 and to be away from the 0 angle, okay? It's good to have the angle close to 0, okay? And if you move away from there, then you are in a worse position, because if you perform bad actions from here, your pole will fall, okay? So you won't get your 200 time steps with your pole balanced, okay? One additional comment about these pictures. Since my visualization is 2-dimensional but I have 4 dimensions, what I did is that for the other 2 dimensions, the other 2 that are not depicted, I take a random value. This is why you have values that change from here to here, for instance, which change a lot. This is because I may have picked different values for the other 2 dimensions, so I get some randomness in the values that I am depicting, because the underlying states are a little bit different from just what you visualize with those 2 dimensions. Okay, I hope you get this point. Something else that you have to visualize to understand what's happening. So that's the value of the threshold in the Bernoulli policy, okay, depending on some states. So I took here the average over all states of the threshold. So that's the initial threshold, okay, and you can see that quite surprisingly here all the values are close to 0.5, okay, so they are close to pure randomness. If you have 0.5, you have half the chance to take left and half the chance to take right. But here we are a little, we are between 0.51 and 0.57. So all the values are above 0.5. Okay. And after training, we get something very different, where the values are scattered between 0 and 1. But you can see that you get a lot of zeros and a lot of 1, which means that after training, the policy has converged to something which is much more deterministic. Because if your threshold is 0, you are sure that you will take right, and if your threshold is 1, then you are sure that you will take left. So you can see that in most states, you will take either right or left deterministically. And there are still a few states where you take something stochastic in between, but much fewer than here. Okay, you have to visualize that in fact the scale on the x-axis is different. So this picture put here would just do a little bump here. So all the values would be there. Okay, so you can see that it has scattered a lot. Okay, so at the end of training, the policy is much less stochastic. It's much closer to a deterministic policy. So it means that you have fewer and fewer exploration after you train. And this is logical with policy gradient techniques, that you start with something which is quite stochastic, and little by little, the policy will converge to determinism if your environment has an optimal deterministic policy, which is the case of most continuous control benchmarks, since they are Markov decision processes. And if you look at my beginners video, you will see that for any MDP there is a deterministic policy which is optimal. Okay, let's now move to a few issues that you encounter when you do what I've done to get those images. First of all, in CartPol and my continuous CartPol variant, you get a reward of 1 for all time steps where you don't fail. Okay, so if you succeed in balancing during 200 time steps, your sum of reward is 200, and if you just succeed for 10 time steps, your sum of reward will be 10, but at each time step you just get a 1. So if you want to get the average reward over all states that you that your agent performed, in fact this average is just 1. So at all lab steps, the current reward minus the average reward is just 0. So if you just take the sum of rewards and you remove just the average, then your reward will be 0 everywhere, so nothing will work. This is something that happened to me. If I discount the reward, then I avoid this, because the initial rewards will be less discounting than the final ones, so your first step will be more rewarding than the last ones, and the average, when subtracted with those values are different, and trajectories that last longer will get a reward over 0, whereas the trajectories that last shorter will get an average, will get a value which is negative, so it will favor longer trajectories, and this will work in practice. But globally, you can understand by having those considerations that having just a reward of 1 at each time step provides a poorly informative gradient, because the values at the different states for the different actions are very similar whatever you do. So you get few information to improve your policy. A second issue that I want to investigate is the fact that on those curves that I've shown you in the beginning, you have a lot of noise. It's very noisy. It's a lot stochastic. In fact, the idea is that that's normal, because I am evaluating a stochastic policy. So the stochastic policy may take wrong actions from time to time and get a poor performance in that context, whereas a deterministic policy corresponding to the best choice each time would behave much better. So it's a good idea to train the stochastic policy, but when you want to evaluate your policy, you take a deterministic version of the policy. And if you do so, this leads to a less noisy results. This is what you can see here. Here what I did is that every, let's say 40 episodes of training, I'm just evaluating the corresponding deterministic policy. And if I do so, then I get something which is much less noisy, because the deterministic policy always provides the same action for the same state. And you can see that, for instance, with the normalized case, here I have a policy that which will be really optimal during some while. So how do I get the deterministic version of the policy? That's easy. I consider that I have that if my threshold is below 0.5, then it means that I should rather take right, and if my threshold is above 0.5, then I should rather take left, or the contrary. So I won't draw a dice. I won't throw a dice to decide what to do. I just decide what to do depending on the value of the threshold for that particular state. So separating training and evaluation epochs is a good standard. This is something that is done in many reinforcement learning papers, and this is something that you should do when you are studying your algorithm. You should have a training part of code where you use the stochastic policy, and an evaluation part of the code where you should use a deterministic policy, and sometimes a stochastic policy, depending on what kind of performance you want to get. But there is an issue with those deterministic policies. Here I show you two initial Bernoulli policies. That's the first that I have already shown you, and you can see that all the thresholds for over the whole states are between 0.51 and 0.57. So it means that all the thresholds are above 0.5. So it means that this policy, this initial random policy, will always take the right action. Whereas this one has all the thresholds between 0.4 and 0.5. So it means that this initial policy will always take the action left. That's due to the way PyTorch initializes the neural networks corresponding to a policy, to a Bernoulli policy. That's the default initialization. So that's an issue, and if you use deterministic policy to train this way, then you will get zero performance, because to balance the pole you have to do left from time to time and right from time to time, and a policy that is always pushing left or always pushing right is sure to get a zero. Okay, so if you just use this way to get a deterministic policy, it won't work at all. Okay, and that's a problem. Okay, then what can you do? You can try a different way to initialize your network, or you train your stochastic policy without evaluating for a time, and once your stochastic policy is enough trained, then the thresholds will move, and then you will get something that is correct, because if you have thresholds that are scattered around 0.5, then the deterministic policy will work. Okay, that's quite obvious. Okay, so with a Bernoulli policy and CART-POL, everything worked. That's fine, despite a few issues that I have just explained. So now let's move to a different form of policy, which is the Gaussian policy. Here I have called it normal because in PyTorch the Gaussian policy is named normal, as Gaussian distribution is the normal distribution. Okay. So here we want to choose a continuous section corresponding to this Gaussian function, which means that if you have your center here, okay, you will take this action with the highest probability, and then your probability of taking those different actions decrease as you move away from the center. Okay, and the integral of all these probabilities must keep to 1. And there are two approaches: one where you keep the variance of the Gaussian constant, so that the variance is represented with a sigma here. If you do so, then your policy will always keep the same level of stochasticity, because your choice will always be scattered the same way. Or you may also apply gradient descent to the variance, and in that case you may expect your initial variance to be rather large, and through gradient descent you may expect your variance to get smaller and smaller, so that you move towards a deterministic policy. So what do you get when you use policy gradient with normal policies on continuous CART-POL? So the same setup as before, but just replacing a Bernoulli policy with the normal. You get this. Okay, so you can see some improvement here, and then no progress anymore. So you don't reach at all the 200 time steps that you would like to reach. So it does not work. Okay. And in that particular case, I coded my normal policy with some adaptive variants, and I had to figure out why it does not work. And it took me a while to figure this out. I had to display many things and to investigate the value of some variables in my code before I could figure out what's happening. Okay, so what was the issue? The idea, okay, this is the code of my normal policy Python class. You will see this again in my code video. And here in the function that takes a state as input and outputs the center and variance of the the neural network outputs the center of the variance of the choice of action given the state. Okay. So here I was using a soft plus so as to get the variance or standard deviation in practice. Okay, but the point is that when you initialize your neural network, it is initialized in such a way that the outputs of your neural network are all very close to 0. Okay, so you get centers close to 0, but also a standard deviation which is very, very small. So in fact, when you initialize your normal policy with this, you get very low stochasticity in the beginning, so your policy is very poor, and you cannot learn from such a poor policy, so your performance does not increase at all. okay, or just a little, as you saw on the previous curve. So just by replacing this adaptive variance with a standard deviation which is constant, or a variance which is constant, okay, so here I took a rather wide standard deviation. So if I just change this value, then my bug is fixed. The point is that all my actions were too close to 0 because I had very few standard deviation, and by just tuning the standard deviation, I took 2 in the beginning, and I could figure out that taking 1.2 for instance is better, but here I'm just using 2. Then I get something which is better and better. Okay, so by just tuning the standard deviation by hand instead of doing it through the algorithm, I will get something that works. Okay, that's what you can see here. After performing the bug fix that I have just shown you, then my performance goes to 200 again. Okay, but this is still very noisy. That's also something that has to be commented upon, which is that when you use those policy gradient algorithm and you tune the parameters by hand, you get something that works somewhat, but you have some drops of performance from time to time. Okay, that's not something which is very stable. Okay, instead of using this fixed Gaussian, I may use a squashed Gaussian. And if you want to know more about the squashed Gaussian policy, you should have a look at my soft actor critique video online, where it is explained how to use this. Okay, the idea consists in having a hyperbolic tangent in the output of the Gaussian normal trajectory. Okay, but let's move forward. So here you get a Bernoulli policy after training, and here you get the corresponding normal policy. So you can see that they are very similar, they get the same way, but since you have something which is Gaussian, instead of having just binary actions, so just yellow and just black, in between you have actions that are in between. So you get some actions that are close to 0 when you are close to the center, so that you should not move your cart too much, so that your pole keeps balanced. Okay, so your actions are more continuous, and they are in a smaller range of values. Okay, but there are still some issues. So here I am just plotting the losses of the critics. So that's the loss of the critic using a Bernoulli policy, and here a normal policy. And you may expect that as long as you train your policy, your loss comes close to 0, because your policy gets closer and closer to the optimal, and the optimal policy should get no loss at all. Okay, and you can see that it's not the case. In fact, your critic keeps some loss rather constant, and in that case it even increases through time. Okay, and that's the same where you just have a look at the loss of the policy, which is not plotted here. So here I am taking a Bernoulli policy, and I am just running a longer run so as to figure out what's happening, to see whether my loss is going to 0. And that's the policy loss, and that's the critic loss. Okay, it's called value loss here, but that's the critic loss. Okay, and you can see that it does not go to 0 at all. Okay. So what about this? The idea is that since the policy is stochastic, there is still some loss due to the choice of actions. Okay, and the point is that this loss may come close to 0, but this would mean that the policy is very close to optimal. But if the policy is very close to optimal, then you get the same trajectory again and again. Okay, and so you don't get enough variance in your input information so as to keep training. And in practice, if you get this situation, what you will see is that your policy will degenerate. Okay, when your loss comes close to 0, you always get the same kind of input, and your neural network finally degenerates. Okay, and I have to tell you that this is common So that's something that is not written in the reinforcement learning papers that you get in the top conferences, but it happens that if you speak with the authors, when they show you some performance over 1 million, 2 million, 10 million time steps, and they stop here, it is sometimes the case that if they would use even more time steps after the what is shown on the paper, you get suddenly a drop of performance because your policy has degenerated. So that's what I call a dirty secret of reinforcement learning papers, is that you can get a very nice curve of improving performance, but they just cut here, and what happens is that just there your performance drops again because your policy has degenerated, and that's not written so often in papers. Okay, so with the normal policy, you finally get something that works. Okay, back here, you get here an actor that works. Okay, but you had to tune the variance to obtain this. So now let's have a look at pendulum. So pendulum is another benchmark where you want also to balance a pendulum on the upright position, but here it's just turning around an axis. Okay, and the idea is that in pendulum the performance is even much more noisy than with cart pole, just because of the way the reward function is defined. The reward function is complicated. I won't comment on it, but you can have a look at the code to see what it is. And if you take standard here, the discounted reward case with policy gradient on pendulum, this is what you get. Okay, so you get some reward that are between minus 1,600, sorry, and minus 800. Okay, so somewhat poor performance. And most importantly, the average performance does not increase quite visibly, and there is a lot of variance in the performance. Okay, so again I have used my different policy gradient algorithms with my various forms of policies, and nothing worked. And finally I discovered that the trick was to rescale the reward function so that the values, instead of being those large negative values, are more positive. So here you can see that I have rescaled the reward so that they move, so that the return over a whole trajectory is between 0 and 100. And here you can see that there is some positive slope, that the performance of a policy is slowly increasing, but not much. So that's what you can get with policy gradient on pendulum. You can see that it does not work well, but through rescaling you can get something that somewhat works, but not very convincingly, let's say. Okay, let me say also that I had to, so as to visualize the slope, I had to run over 1,050 and 500 episodes with several seeds, so that I get something which is an average. Okay, and it took 3 hours on my laptop computer with those 5 seeds to get something. And to get this thing, I had to tune the rescaling of the reward, so it took me time before I could get something that works. Okay, about tuning the rescaling of the reward, what I did, and again this will be explained in the code, is that I coded for a pendulum wrapper environment where I am recomputing the reward. So the pendulum environment provides a reward. With the wrapper I normalize this reward with a different value, and then this is what my algorithm sees so as to train. Okay, again this will be explained in the code part. And finally let's move to my third environment, which will be continuous mountain car. So what's continuous mountain car? You have a cart here and you want to reach that flag uphill, but for doing so, that's just with the cart pole. You can push left or push right with some action strength. Okay, But there is a little difference, which is that, okay, there are two important points. One is that if you just push right, so if you just want to move this way, you don't get enough power so as to go to the top of the hill. Okay, you need to get some velocity first, so you need to first push left, and then given the momentum that you get by moving, then here you arrive here with some initial velocity, and finally you will be able to reach uphill. Okay, and the other point is that you get a positive reward of plus 100 when you reach the top, but you get a negative reward for the strengths that you put in pushing left or right. So you should push as few as possible if you want to decrease the reward that you get. A point first is that a Bernoulli policy can only implement some what is called some bang control, so it can just push either left or right at full strength. Okay, and you can get something that is optimal with a Bernoulli policy on the mountain car setup, where it's just +1 and -1 and that's it. But in the continuous mountain car, since you get this reward penalty for pushing strong, then the Bernoulli policy cannot find those weak actions that you need, and you cannot be optimal with a Bernoulli policy. Okay, and the point is that due to those reward penalties, there is a so-called deceptive gradient effect. What's the idea? The idea is that if you push left and right, but you don't reach the top, you don't see this reward. So what signal do you get? You just get a signal that tells you that the less you push, the lower the negative reward you get. So you may just decide that the best you can do is stop moving. Okay? If you didn't find the reward soon enough, then your policy gradient will push you towards stopping to move. Okay? Whereas if you find the reward, then you can see that going in those states is much better, so it will have to find the correct actions to reach this particular area. So this environment is very particular because it provides the deceptive gradient effect, that if you did not find the reward soon enough, then you may learn not to move. This generates an initial exploration issue, that you should explore a lot in the beginning so as to find the reward, otherwise you should converge to doing nothing. And if you are just using the policy gradient algorithms with my code on the mountain car continuous environment, it will slowly converge to not moving. Actually, here again I have rescaled the reward so as to get this particular performance. So in fact, here you should see negative values that slowly converge to 0, and you get 0 if you don't move. Okay. Whereas what you can do is either get some initial exploration policy which is strong enough, or what I did in the code is that I provided some expert policy, which is first pushing left and then pushing right. Okay. And if I just learn my initial policy from regression from the expert policy, then I will get something that works most of the time. So here there is no bonus of plus 100, sorry. So you can see that the top reward that you can get is close to 100 because there is this minus the strength that you apply, and my initial policy is already good because it's the expert policy, and through training it can maintain the performance, but from time to time you get the performance that drops. It means that on this episode it did not manage to get the reward, so it just get punished by the negative effort that it made so as to get to the reward without getting it. Okay. A different idea, instead of using an expert policy, would be to use an efficient exploration method, and this is what we did with my co-authors in that particular paper, which was accepted at ICML a few years ago. Okay. A thing that I want to show also with continuous mountain car is that you can still have some gradient failures. So here you have some trajectory about the reward which is getting more and more negative, and you can see that the values of the reward are -2 times 10 to the power of 10. So that's a huge negative reward. So you can see that in fact in that case your algorithm is diverging. So why is it diverging? Again, you have to investigate what's happening in that particular case. And if you look at the policy, you understand what's happening. In fact, all the actions that the policy is proposing is between -5,000 and -22,000. So it means that the gradient tells the agent to push left more and more, and the more it pushes left, the more the gradient is asking to push more left than this. So what does this happen? In fact, in the environment, the action is bounded between -1 and 1, but in the policy itself, there is nothing to bound this action. Okay, so in some circumstances, your gradient will ask you to have an action which is beyond -1 or beyond 1. Okay, and in that case, since the reward takes the actions before bounding, okay, the action considers the unbodied action. The reward, yes, so consider the unbodied action. If your action is very high, that you get a very high negative reward, and that's why you obtain this kind of trajectory. Okay, so the idea is that in some cases, if your gradient is pushing in a direction, but in the environment the action you take does not follow this direction just because it's bounded, then you will get something that diverges. Okay, and in that particular case, a squash Gaussian policy may avoid these circumstances. Okay. Finally, let me say a few words about learning a critique in the context of policy gradient algorithms. So here we are back to the card-pole continuous environment, and here you get the policy gradient with the normalized reward case in green, and in blue you get something different. That's the policy gradient algorithm with the baseline, which is a Q function. And you can see that it works somewhat well. Okay, here you reach a performance close to 200 time steps on continuous card pole as in the non-critic case, but you can see that here the performance degenerates. Okay, the point is that as soon as your policy gets close to optimal, the input data for the critic will get more and more always the same, and your critic will degenerate, as I already explained to you in the case of the policy. So finally you get something which is more unstable than in the case where you don't use a critic, which is not what you would expect. Okay, and this is a rather nice run, but in some cases your degeneracy is much more abrupt. You get a sudden drop of performance in your curve. Okay, I wanted also to show you that here I am learning an optimal critic in the case of a standard policy gradient algorithm. I already explained to you how you should read this optimal critic, but I want to show you that if you start from a top policy, so you train your policy whatever the way you train it, and then you learn a critique from this top policy, you get something that is much worse. Okay, this critique is less accurate than this one. Okay, and the idea is that if you learn along with a top policy, you always learn along the same trajectories, so you always get the same data. Okay, you don't get enough exploration, so it's harder to learn an optimal critique. Finally, one thing that I want to stress is the difference between learning a critique with Monte Carlo methods and learning a critique with temporal difference methods. So first I will show you how it works with Monte Carlo critique estimation. Here you have a piece of code taken again from my labs where you train a critique with a Monte Carlo method, and what's important is here is the way you compute the loss, between some target and a state action. So what you do is very simple. In fact, you collect a batch of trajectories into episodes, okay, and then you will compute the loss you will compute a target value based on those trajectories, and you will compute the loss between the target and what the policy tells you for a given state and a particular action. So sorry, what the critic tells you for a particular state action pair. Okay. So you take your episode, you discount the rewards along the trajectories, and the target values are just those discounted values for any state action pair. So it tells you that being in that state and doing this action provides you with this return at that stage of the trajectory, because as I told you, the Q values correspond, or as I told you in a different video, the Q value of being in a state and performing a particular action corresponds to the return that you may expect from taking that action in that state and then following the current policy. Okay, so with Monte Carlo methods, you can estimate those discounted values for any state action pair. And to train your critic, what you will do is that you will just train the neural network corresponding to your critic, taking this state action value as target and using the mean squared error as a loss function between this target value and the output of the critic for that particular of the critic for that particular state action pair. So if your neural network tells you that for that particular state action pair the value is val, and the target tells you it's something different, what you will do is you will try to minimize the distance between those two values by changing the parameters of your neural network. So you are just performing regression on the parameters of your neural network so that it converges to the target values computed along the trajectories. That's the whole story. Okay, that's quite simple. And what is very important in that case is that those target values are completely independent of critic values. They just correspond to what you get along your trajectories. Whereas in temporal difference method, you get something different. Okay. Here in temporal difference method, you use the Bellman update equation to compute the value of the critic depending on previous values of the critic. So as it is explained in my DQN and DDPG videos, you have your temporal difference error delta, okay, which is defined this way. That's the current reward plus gamma times the value of taking that this action in the next state, okay, minus the local Q value. So here this corresponds to your target value and this corresponds to the output of your network. So you want to, so if you define the target value with this particular part, you will minimize a loss corresponding to the average difference between the target and the output of your network. So that's what you get here in the code. Okay, you take reward plus gamma times the next values as target, and you will train your network so as to minimize the difference between this target and what the network is doing. But here what is very different is that the target value depends on the next value, so the value that you get from the next state and the next action. Okay, so your target value will change depending on the network. So why am I insisting on this? Because if you look at the way those two different methods train the critic, you get something which is very different that you can see here. Here you get the way the loss changes corresponding to the Monte Carlo method, and here corresponding to the temporal difference method. So in the Monte Carlo case, you are just performing regression between targets and what your network does. So that's very easy. This difference should decrease along time. Okay, and you can see that in that particular case, with the Cartpole environment, you get a loss that is initially very high and that quickly goes down, but it does not go down to zero. It does go down to some values. I will go back to that later on. Whereas in the temporal difference case, the point is that in the beginning all the critic values are close to 0. So as a loss, you get a difference between two values that are close to 0, and you get a loss which is itself close to 0. But as you train, those critic values start increasing because they should reach the values corresponding to your targets that you get with Monte Carlo methods. Okay, so the difference between the current and the next state values start to increase, and they increase until they reach some plateau. And as I explained before, after reaching this plateau, they should decrease again towards 0. But this is not what happens in practice. Okay, so you can see that the dynamics of learning with a Monte Carlo method and learning with a temporal difference method is completely different. And just a word to say that if you use regression on critic from trajectories, you get something that does not go to 0, and this explains why your loss does not get to 0. Whereas if you use regression with a standard data set that you get on internet, and this is what I tried in the beginning, you get a loss that quickly goes really to 0. And the point is that your regression problem might be ill-conditioned, because you may want to learn Q values everywhere on your state action space, whereas you have some data that is only on some subpart of the state action space, which makes regression difficult because you don't have IID samples. Okay, so that's all for the part about using a critic. I may say many more things, but I will stop here for that particular video. So I just want to recap a few take-home messages. So first, you should be aware that each learning environment comes with its own issues. For instance, in continuous mountain car, you get this deceptive gradient issue. In pendulum, you get this point that the reward function is a lot sensitive to what you are doing, so you get a lot of noise in the reward signal, okay? Whereas CartPol is easy. And the point is that CartPol is the easiest GYM classic control benchmark. So if you want to learn about policy gradient algorithms and reinforcement learning algorithm, you should start with easy ones such as CartPol. But if it works, this does not mean that your algorithm is perfect, because your algorithm may not work on more difficult environments like pendulum and continuous mountain car. Another point is that, as you have seen from this video, basic policy gradient algorithm, they work somewhat, okay, after some tuning. So you have to tune the hyperparameters of the algorithm and even the parameters of the environment, which is not so nice, so that you get something that works. A word about this: in fact, in the videos that I have shown you, I am renormalizing the reward function in pendulum and even in continuous mountain car so as to get something that works. So it does not mean that I have changed the environment. It could be the algorithm itself that incorporates some internal reward renormalization technique, and this is what most state-of-the-art reinforcement learning algorithms or libraries do. In fact, they have some renormalization step where they get some data from the environment, and from this data they just extract the average reward signal and they perform some renormalization so as to get the return between 0 and 100, for instance, because this is what works best for learning with neural networks. Also, what I wanted to stress with this video is that if you have something that works, that's fine, but if you have something that does not work, then it requires a lot of investigation, and finally it requires that you understand the phenomena behind what you get, so that you finally find a fix that will allow you to get a working algorithm. Okay, if you take again the example of pendulum, okay, you get something that is noisy and you don't get any improvement, and if you have no idea of what policy gradient algorithms are doing, you have no chance to, just by playing with the hyperparameters, find something that works. You have to get to the idea that you may renormalize the reward and this and this. Okay, so you need some culture about the phenomena in reinforcement learning, and the standard or the bug that you can find most often so that you can fix your algorithm more or less easily. Okay. And let me say that finally, state-of-the-art deep reinforcement learning algorithms are more powerful, but they may still fail on simplistic benchmark. Here we have a paper with Guillaume Matron and Nicolas Perrin, where we show that DDPG, which is one of the standard deep reinforcement learning algorithms, can fail on a one-dimensional continuous action environment. Okay, and we explain why it can fail. So, to summarize all this, reinforcement learning is a very exciting domain, but you have to be aware that most of the time you have to understand complicated phenomena, you have to tune things, etc. So it may be very close to alchemy if you just want to plug these algorithms without understanding them and looking for something that works. Otherwise, you have to go deeper into your understanding of those algorithms, and finally you may get something that is more reasonable and that is further away from alchemy. Thank you for listening, and if you have any question about those videos, don't hesitate to send me an email, and good luck with the labs if you try to use them.